You can be seated. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Nick. I am one of the pastors here. I want to welcome all those watching online with us also. We believe church should be relevant, simple, and real. And as I said, we're concluding this series, Becoming the Villain. And what we've said up to this moment was that every single one of us, there are fears. There are things in our life that we hide behind, that we cover ourselves up with. And while in most jobs and in every relationship and with our kids and with our situations, all of us, we start off as the hero. What happens is unintentionally over time, we become the villain. That every single one of you, on some level, you're the villain of your own life and probably other people's story. Because over time, and we've said it from day one, it didn't happen in a day. It didn't happen in a week, didn't happen in a month. Maybe a year, maybe several years, that over time, all of us, every single one of us, myself included, we have the potential, if not checked, we have the propensity even, we have the natural ability to drift towards becoming the villain in our marriages, to crossing boundaries in our own thought lives, to going farther than we ever thought in our finances and in the debt. We have the ability, every single one of us, to become the villain of our own stories. And today we will finish the story of a man named Saul. A man that, if you remember, if you weren't here, week one, we said, listen, he was chosen. He didn't really ask for it. He was just chosen for the job, and the nation wanted a hero. They wanted somebody to come in and save them, to be the man, to be the person. He was a head taller than everybody else. He was more athletic. He was set up for success in every way possible. He should have been the hero, but what we've said all along, and what we've discovered every single week, was that he had all kinds of fears. He had all kinds of dysfunctions that were hidden from everybody else, that no one else probably saw, and that he hid and he hid and he hid and he hid. And today we're gonna read how the story ends, and it doesn't end well. And so if you got a Bible, you want to follow along with us, we're gonna be in 1 Samuel chapter 28. If not, we'll put up on the screen for you. But we're gonna jump in to the conclusion of this story and see what happens. It says this: Now Samuel was dead, and all Israel had mourned for him and buried him in his own town of Ramah. Saul had expelled the mediums and spiritists from the land. This is an odd verse to start out a section, but here's what it's doing. It's setting, if you can think of the Bible as a story that's written, and there's an author, and he's trying to communicate a message to you. That's really what's happening here. That the author, whoever wrote 1 Samuel, is writing the story, and he realizes he's coming to the conclusion of it, and something happens in this next few verses that's incredibly important. He says, listen, before we jump into the specifics of what happened, I got to tell you two really, really important details. One, Samuel's dead. Again, if you remember the story up to this moment, Samuel is the prophet. He is the one that God spoke to and spoke to Saul through. He is the prophet of God. He is the man. And then the other thing, it throws in this other detail, this thing that for whatever reason, we don't have any context to it, that for whatever reason, Saul felt very just strong about, listen, we're going to get rid of all the mediums and spirits. We're going to get rid of all that stuff. There's something unbiblical about people that kind of do that tarot card reading, called up mediums, fortune telling, all that kind of stuff. He said, listen, there's something morally reprehensible for him in that world. And that's really what I want you to see first thing, more than we jump into, is this. That what he starts off is just because you're spiritual doesn't mean you're biblical. I want to pause really quickly. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but as I look at Facebook posts, if I had conversations with people, whatever, here's what I see, and I just think there's some confusion about it. We live in a culture where everybody's spiritual. I'm a really spiritual person. I'm spiritual. I got crystals, and I got my horoscopes, and I look at where the stars were aligned, and I'm a Cancer or a Zodiac, or I don't even, whatever that is. We have all these different things. And what I need you to know before we got to get any farther is it's not enough to be spiritual. Listen, here's the deal. Satan is spiritual. The demons are spiritual. It's not enough to be spiritual. The goal of a Christian is to be biblical. And what I see in our culture right now is I see this unique blending of, I see people that say, yeah, God's God and he's God and I trust in him and I'm going to follow him and he's going to speak to me and he's going to be my guide. And then when he doesn't or he's silent or whatever that is, listen, I'm going to go to a fortune teller. I'm going to go to a medium. I want to talk to my dead grandmother or my, passed away, other family member, whatever that is. And we've got this unique, weird, kind of dysfunctional blending. And it's just so broken and so messed up. And what you need to understand is God does not answer those prayers. God does not speak to those people. And Saul, this is the start, hope story. The man who Saul trusted to God speak through is dead. And he's outlawed every other line of communication to the spiritual world. That's how the story starts. And it goes on with this. The Philistines assembled and came and set up camp at Shunem, while Saul gathered all Israel and set up camp at Gilboa. Now, this is not unique. This is not different. Matter of fact, if you've been following along with us, it's just another battle. It's just another war. It's just another fight. Same enemy, different place, different time, same problem. And again, if you're here today, you can relate to this, because here's the deal. Isn't most of the struggles that you struggle with, isn't it the same problems, the same enemy, the same issues, the same thing, just different place, different date, different time? Like, you have an addiction or you have a struggle, you've got a marital problem or a kid problem or whatever, and it's like, man, I keep fighting the same enemies. They're like, don't go away. I win a battle, I win a battle, I win a battle, I win a battle, and it's like the same thing. I can't seem to get ahead. I can't seem to move past it. So the story starts with a very familiar backdrop of Saul. He's the king. What's his job? Go before the enemies, go before the nation and lead the nation into the battle against the Philistines. No big deal. What's your job? To see the enemies in your life, to see the problems in your life, to see the struggles in your life, and go before everybody else to be the leader that you are, and go defeat what's in front of you. This is not unique. I say it all the time. Their story is our story. But while this is not unique, his response to it is incredibly unique. Because we've said it the whole time, that if you walk away from God, if you continually kind of sin yourself away, just kind of keep going there, keep hiding, keep letting those fears kind of get away from you, just kind of put your head down, it'll be okay. I don't got to deal with it. I don't got to mess with that. I know I got that problem. I've got away from it, away with it up to this point. I'll be fine. At some point, what's normal will feel unique and feel different. And you will respond in a unique and different way. It says this: when Saul saw the Philistine army, he was afraid, and terror filled his heart. He inquired of the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him. But dreams or Urim prophets. It says, normal day, normal battle, normal struggle. But let me just say this, that when you walk away from God far enough, what seems normal to other people will seem ridiculously terrifying to you. That there's a temptation to exaggerate and exasperate a problem that's in front of you. And all of a sudden it gets bigger than it really is, and it feels bigger than it really is. And Saul is here, and he does this. He does what every single person does. God, what do you want me to do? It's the craziest thing. God, what do you want me to do? See, at the end of the day, here's what I want you to see. That he wants to know if God's with him, but he doesn't want to know God. I see that all the time in the church world. I want, God, tell me what to do. I'm in this unique problem. I got this problem in front of me. God, what do you want me to do? And I just feel like sometimes God's going, I'm not going to answer that. Why? Well, because I told you how to deal with your relationships from a sexual standpoint, and you ignored that. I told you how to handle your money and what you should give and what you shouldn't give, and you ignored that. I told you how to forgive people and how to love people and how to handle people. Like, there's this foundation that I've told everybody to do, and you've ignored and ignored and ignored and ignored. But God, in this situation, what do you want me to do? I can't tell you how many people I have had in counseling on Tuesday, and I don't see that next Sunday. Because they want to know what God wants them to do. They get a phone call about sickness, or they got a problem, or they got a chaotic situation, they got a crisis, they got a battle in front of them that's been a battle for a while, but all of a sudden, it becomes a very real battle. It's like, God, what do you want me to do? And God doesn't answer, because at the end of the day, here's what God knows. God knows that, you know what? Saul doesn't really want to know him. He doesn't really want a relationship with him. He just wants to use him. And what we're going to see is, at the end of the day, all Saul cares about is what do I do next? He doesn't really care about God at all. At the end of the day, here's what it looks like for us. We want God's guidance without God's guardrails. God, tell me what to do in this situation. No, I don't care what you say about my relationships. No, I don't care what you say about my money. No, I don't care what you say about forgiveness. I don't care what you say about stealing. I'm going to steal Netflix like crazy. I'm going to download those TV shows. I'm going to watch those shows I know I probably shouldn't watch. I don't care what you have, boundaries you've got set up in my relationships and stuff like that. I don't care what you say about my sex life. God, I don't want the guardrails. God, just tell me what to do. And those are the moments that when we seek God, God's like, I'm not going to answer that. I'm not going to give you false hope. I'm not going to do that. See, here's the fear that we're going to talk about that we hide from. It's the fear of silence. See, when you walk away from God long enough, when you sit back and listen, we've all done this. I've done this multiple times in my life. We sit back and go, you know what, God, I need you to help me in this situation. I need to help me in my job. I need you to help me in my marriage. But you know what, no, I'm going to ignore that, and I'm going to ignore that, and I don't care what you say about that, and I'm just going to keep walking, God. I'm going to keep walking away. At some point, we get to a point where we're like, okay, God, I need you now. And it's silent. In the moment that we need God the most, He's silent. And it has the potential to terrify us. This is Saul's moment. He sees a battle in front of him that he knows he cannot win. Some of you, there's a battle in front of you right now. There's an addiction, there's a problem, there's a marriage issue, a kid issue, a financial issue. I don't know what it is. There's a battle in front of you that you're looking at, and you understand, I humanly cannot defeat that enemy. And you're praying, God, where are you? And there's nothing. And if you're honest, it's been like that for a bit. But if you're being honest, if you look back in your life, yeah, you might come to church for a while, and you might even read your Bible, and you might even pray to God. But when was the last time God spoke to you? This is what happens with sin. This is what happens when we walk away and we slowly kind of continue in those fears and continue in the walk against God. There's this deafening silence. Story goes on. Saul then said to his attendants, "Find me a woman who is a medium, so I may go and inquire of her. There is one in Endor," they said. There's one in Endor. They said, listen, here's the deal. He said, listen, if God's not going to speak to me, I'll go figure it out somewhere else. I don't need God. God isn't my God. He's just a tool. And when that tool doesn't work, I'll pick up a different tool. That's why all this other stuff is so dangerous, is because what you communicate to God when you dabble in other issues like that, other tarot card readings or horoscopes, and you think it's fun, and you think it's kind of silly and whatever, what you're communicating to God is, God, I don't trust you, and you're not enough. You're just a tool. And when I can't figure out, when you don't come through for me in the way that I want you to, God, I'll just pick up a different tool. I'll just go somewhere else. I'll just do something else. It'll be okay. But what I want you to see is this, that when you don't follow God's commands, it will ultimately lead to personal compromise. Because the story started off with Saul saying, listen, I got rid of all the mediums. I got rid of all that. Listen, that's bad. Are you kidding me? No, those are bad. Get rid of them all. You had a moral standard in the beginning. Some of you here today, you had a moral standard in the beginning, and you've crossed it. You're like going so far past it. It's crazy. It's disturbing to you. It bothers you. You are so far past where you want to be financially. You are so far past in your marriage. I mean, it started out as a dumb little fight, and you just were both going to be stubborn, and you weren't going to apologize, not a big deal. But you know what? That small little fight has become a big, big deal now. You're so far past where you wanted to be because you didn't really follow what God said. You didn't really do that. You just kind of walked away, and it'll be okay, it'll be fine. You kind of made all these excuses. It's not a big deal. You just need to understand, when you don't follow God's commands, ultimately, you will cross the boundaries that you set for yourself. What I find so fascinating about this is not God's boundaries, but Saul's. This is not something that Saul begrudgingly said, okay, well, God says so, I better. No, this was something like Saul felt personally convicted about early on his walk with God, and now he's like, no, I don't care. That's how far away he's gotten. And again, it's so easy to get that. And you won't get there in a day. You won't get there in a month. I'm just telling you, I see it over and over and over again. As a matter of fact, I got a message before I walked on stage. A person just texted me. I'm so far from God. I haven't been there in a while. I don't know what to do. It happens all the time. And it can happen to a person sitting in church every single week just as easy as it can happen to somebody outside of the church. And so Saul asked for a medium. And then he does this. This blows my mind. So Saul disguised himself, putting on other clothes. And at night, he and 2 men went to the woman. Consult for me, he said, and bring up for me the one I name. See, here's the deal. The imagery of this is powerful. Don't miss this. It says in the New Testament that if you're a Christian, if you'd say, hey, today, Nick, I believe in God, I accepted Christ, I'm a Christian. It says that you were clothed. You were clothed with righteousness, that they are clothing that you put on yourself that proclaims who God is, that proclaims to other people who you are, and ultimately, in God's eyes, who you are. But Saul would have been the king. He would have been wearing royal clothing. He takes off his royal clothing to disguise himself. Why? Because he's going someplace he shouldn't. He's hiding. And that's what happens every single time that we do something like this. We take off our clothing of righteousness of God. We take off what God's done for us. We take off the freedom that God's given us. So many people in here right now, you're stuck in addiction, and you think you're stuck, and it's just that you won't let go. You think you can't let go of it. You think you're in bondage and God's freed you. You just won't walk away from it. You're disguising yourself. See, at the end of the day, here's what I want you to see, that eventually the real person always comes out. Eventually the real person always comes out. See, there's some people, and I want to speak to a very specific thing because I think it hits this so powerfully. Statistics say 1 in 2 or 2 out of 3 men struggle with pornography. Statistics also say that 1 in 3 women struggle with pornography. So you can look around the room and do the math really quickly here. Okay? And here's the deal. And I'm talking about this one particularly because here's how it starts. It starts as, listen, I'm just going to look at that, and that's natural. It's not a big deal, da-da-da-da. But here's what I know about that specific issue. It will take you to a place over and over and over and over and over a day until one day you wake up and it was innocent and it was kind of silly and it wasn't a big deal, and you're wearing the black jacket. Because you've crossed boundaries that you never thought you crossed. You're watching and looking at things that disturb even you. And there's a part of you that thinks that people knew what you really thought about, if people knew what you secretly watched on your phone or your computer or whatever, they would be disturbed and disgusted. So you hide. Thinking I can't tell anybody. Thinking I can't talk about it. Thinking I'm the only one, taking off the clothing that God has given you to go pursue something that you are crossing your own boundaries. And it doesn't happen in a day. It doesn't happen in a month. It doesn't even happen in a year. But over time you go from the hero to the villain. See, when we started this series, most of you probably didn't notice. I wore a white jacket, and then a light gray jacket, and a little bit darker gray jacket, a gray jacket, and dark gray jacket, and a black jacket. But you didn't notice it, because we don't. We don't notice the compromises in our life. We don't notice how far we've gone until one day we wake up and we're stuck in an addiction. We're stuck in debt. We're stuck in divorce or a broken marriage. Looking back going, I have no clue how far I've come. That's so many shades away from where I wanted to be in my life. I'm telling you, fear will drive you from God farther than you ever thought. And some of you are here today, and I don't know what shade you're on. I don't know where you're at. But if you don't take off the fears that you've been struggling, if you don't take off the fears that we've been talking about past several weeks. You will wake up one day and not recognize the man or the woman in the mirror. And in turn, even worse, you will not be able to hear the voice of God anymore. The story goes on now. But the woman, the medium, the woman said to him, surely you know what Saul has done. Surely, listen, everybody heard it. He got rid of them all. He has cut off the mediums and the spiritists from the land. Why have you set a trap for my life to bring about my death? Listen, she knows it's illegal. She knows it's wrong. And Saul, dressed in different clothes, hiding out, covering up, pretending to be somebody he's not, much like many people here today. You're pretending to be somebody that you're not. You're pretending to be better than you are. Goes to her and she's like, no, are you kidding me? Everybody knows Saul's against that. Here's what he says. Such irony in this. Saul swore to her by the Lord, the guy that's not speaking to him, the thing that he won't follow, the person he won't obey, the Lord. As surely as the Lord lives, you will not be punished for this. I think there's such irony in a person who's not following God, who can't hear the voice of God, who really rejects the guidance of God, stating what God will and will not do. We see it all the time. See people that aren't Christians that sit back and are horrified by actions and go, if God was real, he would never do that. You'll be fine. God won't care about that. Listen, nobody's perfect. Listen, God's got so many other things to worry about. God doesn't care about your little issue. God doesn't care about your problem. We speak for God. I don't know. I just think it's dangerous. But that's not the worst thing. Here it goes. Then the woman asked, whom shall I bring up for you? Bring up Samuel. Why did he say Samuel? Because in Saul's world, Samuel's the only person that he knows God specifically spoke to. And what I would say to you today is this. If you were here today and you say, listen, I'm trying to figure out what God wants me to do. I'm trying to figure out my life. I'm trying to figure out my next steps. But Nick, I've got some stuff. I've got a jet black jacket on, okay? I am so far. I have no clue what to do. Let me say, listen, this is the only thing that Saul does right in the whole story. Is that if you can't hear the voice of God, you go find somebody who actually does. So you say, listen, God's not speaking to me, but God's speaking to that person. God's speaking to her, man. She's telling stories and she's walking with God and he does this. You find a pastor, you find a small group leader, you find something else like that. I don't know who it is. You find somebody. It's the only thing he does right in the whole story is he just recognizes, listen, I am broken. I can't hear it, but that dude does. And I would say, if you're here today and you're like, man, I'm struggling, find somebody who God does speak to. Talk to them. Because they'll give you good advice, hopefully, God willing. And he goes on. When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out at the top of her voice and said, Saul, why have you deceived me? You are Saul. She recognized him. I don't know how. I don't know. God spoke to her. I have no clue. Doesn't really kind of say. Just all of a sudden she realizes, hey, the guy in front of me isn't who I thought he was. I'm telling you, there's some addictions and there's some real struggles in here right now. And if you don't deal with it soon, today, your spouse or your friends or your kids will look at you the same way that woman looked at Saul and go, the person in front of me who I thought you were is not the person I thought they were. You're not who I thought you were. It'll blow it all up. She looks at him and says, you're not who I thought you were. See, at the end of the day, Saul's caught pursuing privately what he outlawed publicly. It's the politician, right? I love politicians. They're great. They're bastions of morality. But isn't it so true that you have all these men and women who stand on family values and morals and all the stuff like that only to be caught sleeping with somebody else and cheating on their spouse and whatever? And you're like, are you kidding me? It's the parent who talks about don't do drugs, don't do drugs, don't do drugs, don't do drugs. They're so terrible for you. And then the kid finds the parent's stash somewhere. It's the person on Facebook who rails against alcohol, and don't do it, and you're a terrible person, should be illegal, da-da-da-da-da, but yet you catch them in Bowling Green like 2 years ago, right? You know what I'm talking about? That's what happens in our world. That when we walk away from God, when we don't deal with these fears, eventually we will be caught and we will be outed. It is not a matter of if, it is only a matter of time. For Saul, his time is running out. For some of you, your time is running out. Goes on. Samuel said to Saul, why have you disturbed me by bringing me up? Next verse. I am in great distress, Saul said. The Philistines are fighting against me, and God has departed from me. He no longer answers me either by prophets or by dreams. So I have called on you to tell me what to do. I am lost. I have a battle I'm going to lose. I have a struggle that I can't win. I have an addiction I can't get over. I have a marriage issue. I have a kid. I've got problems. I have Philistine issues in my world. I can't fix it. And to make it worse, God's left me. I finally did it. I finally walked far enough away from God that he left me. I don't know what to do. Samuel, help me. Here's what he says. Why do you consult me? I think in that question, he's asking, what? You're talking to the wrong person. You're talking to me when you should be talking to God. You're talking to me when you should be dealing with somebody else. Why are you talking to me? At the end of the day, why are you dealing with me? Now that the Lord has departed from you and become your enemy. We talked last week about what sin does and how it can make you the enemy of God and God the enemy for you. That if you don't deal with envy, that was one of the specific things we talked about. It's so easy to make God the enemy of our lives. And we become the enemy of God. And Samuel just calls it out and says, listen, no, you've walked so far away from God. You are doing such damage to his people, such damage to the world around you, such damage to the people's faith. No. What are you doing? And then he says this, because you did not obey. That's the key word. Obey. The core of it, what the struggle is its obedience. Every single week, there's been something that Saul has done that he said, listen, I know I probably shouldn't, but I don't care. Why? Because I'm scared, and I'm going to hide behind a whole bunch of excuses. I'm going to hide behind, listen, I can't deal with it. It's too hard. No one will like me. They pressured me. It's not my fault. I've got issues. Okay, I just want that. God, why won't you give me that? A whole bunch of issues. Like you have a whole bunch, listen, here's what I know about you, and I don't even have to know you. Whatever you do wrong that you would say you even break your own code of ethics, you have a justification for it, don't it? You got excuses. Well, you don't understand. She did this, and he did this, and they didn't, and I should have, and no one's perfect, and blah, 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 blah. Samuel just cuts right through it and says, yeah, you know the issue, it's obedience. You're not obedient. Or carry out its fierce wrath against the Amalekites. The Lord has done this to you today, and then he says this wraps it up. The Lord will deliver both Israel and you into the hands of the Philistines. And tomorrow, you and your sons, they're going to be with me. Translation, you're dead. Tomorrow, you, your family, your men, many people in your nation, die. See you later. In fact, see you tomorrow. And Samuel's gone. And the rest of the story, if you read it, it's exactly what happens. Go to chapter 31, and you read it. It's tragic. Saul goes into battle still, and it says that his sons died, and that he was hit with an arrow, and instead of dealing with what's in front of him, instead of dealing with the pain, instead of dealing with the fight in front of him, it says he commits suicide. He dies on a battlefield, hung on the enemy's walls, with his head cut off, stripped of his clothing, stripped of his armor, stripped of his strength, alone. He started as the hero, and he became the villain the whole time. And what I want you to see today, what I want you to hear from me today is, there are people in here right now that you're on the cusp of the same thing. That your secret, private issue, your problem, your thing that you've crossed boundaries that you wish you never crossed, that you can't believe you crossed, your undercurrent of your life that you can't get out of your head, it's about to kill something. And the fallout will be greater than just you. The fallout will be your family. The fallout will be your job. The fallout will be your reputation. The fallout will be other things like that. There's way more at stake than you realize. It's way bigger than just you. And that's what kind of says, listen, it's just you. It's just your issue. It's not a big deal. But you got people watching you. You got people following you. You've got people dependent on you. And your obedience, your faithfulness to deal with this is way, way bigger than you realize. There's way more at stake. Because you're some shade of darkness. And today you need to deal with it. Because for some, not all, today is God's last statement to you saying, listen, if you don't deal with it tomorrow it's going to end poorly for you. Tomorrow is the day. And again, not physically, but relationally, emotionally, spiritually. I don't know what it is. But you've got to take off what you're hiding behind. See, in this story, we don't get the answer. We don't get the answer in what this is. There's no solution in this. It ends terribly. He ends as the villain. There's no redemption. There's no grace. There's no support. There's no mercy. It is just like, ooh, done. And there's no happy ending for it. And that's life, isn't it? Here's the deal. Just so you know, you can leave here today, sit there, fold your arms, and go like, I don't care. I'm not telling anybody else. My fear of what other people would think about if I came forward, my fear of my reputation, my fear of what it is, my fear, whatever. Listen, it is more important for me to hold on to my reputation than for me to hold on to my marriage or my life. It's way more important. I tell you, you can leave here today, do nothing. Nothing will change. You can do that. Because we don't find the answer in Saul. But we do in the next king. Because the next king's worse. The next king's a rapist, murderer. He gets thousands of men killed by his own pride and ego. He is, by all accounts, if you would just list all the things he does, he's a hideous, terrible human being. And yet we name our kids after this guy. And it has nothing to do with what he did wrong. See, some of you right now, you're thinking, Nick, you have no clue how far I've walked away. You have no clue how deep I am in that. You have no clue where I'm at. If you only knew how far away from God I was, you wouldn't say I could come back. You wouldn't say. And what you don't understand is the depth and grace of God's love for you. You don't understand what David did. But there's two verses that I think are so powerful. Because after David stays home and he's lazy, and he either sleeps with or rapes some woman, and she gets pregnant, and he kills her husband, and he's hiding it, and he thinks he's got away with it, much like some of you right now. You think you're getting away with it, it's fine, it's not a big deal. Just like Saul, there's a prophet. And it wasn't Samuel. That prophet's name was Nathan. And here's the verse. Nathan confronts him. And then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Saul never once said that. Saul never once kind of dealt with that. Saul never once owned that. He always made excuses. He always hid. He always had some problems and some struggles. It was always somebody else's fault. It was always somebody else's issue. But David, when confronted with hideous, I don't know what your sin is in here right now. Hear me when I say that. It's JV compared to David. Unless you're a rapist, murderer, you're good. And even then, I've got a verse, you're good. You never can go too far from the grace and the love of God. Ever. But that's what it does. That's the lie. You're too far. God wouldn't love you. How could he love you? How could he accept you? Whatever, da-da-da-da. Here's the next verse. Nathan replied, the Lord has taken away your sins. You are not going to die. Most powerful verses in that book, right there. I've sinned. You're good. That's it. No conversation about how far away you are. No conversation about next steps. No conversation about you better figure it out and you better not do that again. You better, no lectures, nothing. You've done this. I know. You're good. That's it. Every week we've talked about how do you take off this thing? How do you take off your darkness, that thing that you feel? It's real simple. It's just repent. That's it. That's it. You take it off when you just repent. And I don't know what you're walking through. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what struggle it is. I don't know what addiction. I don't know what problem is. I don't know if it's porn like I talked about earlier or debt. I don't know if it's a marital issue and you're cheating on somebody. I don't know if you're stealing. I have no clue. I don't know if you've got a drug. I don't know. Here's the deal. It doesn't matter. What matters is, are you willing to turn? You are one decision away from a different life. You're not steps. You're not a journey. You don't got to earn it. You're not going to work for it. The gospel is very, very simple. That God so loved the world that he gave his only son for you so that you could have life and life to the fullest. Whoever believes in him will not perish, but spend eternity in communion, in relationship, reconnected with the God who loves them. So, we're gonna open the altar up, and my invitation is to everybody in here is to repent, is to own it, to own your junk. And I know the arguments. I know the arguments in your head because I've sat where you've sat. I've been in these services where I feel like, man, I should go up, and I'm having an argument, but I'm sitting back and I'm thinking, well, I got somebody with me, and I don't know if I want to go up, and what are people going to think? And they're going to think it's a terrible thing. I mean, he talked about that issue, and I don't want to think about that issue. I got a different issue. And, all these different things in your mind. Here is the question that you need to answer today about whether you should come forward or not. If you feel like you should, here is your decision. Is God really Lord? If he's really Lord, you do what he says. If he's really God, you follow him regardless of everybody else, regardless of the issues. Because it says on the cross that Jesus didn't want to go to the cross. But his prayer was this: not my will, but yours. And he went from this posture to this posture for you, so that you could be free. So that you could walk out of here today radically different. Not because you're awesome, not because you're going to fix it, not because you're going to do better, not because you're going to try harder, but because his grace and his mercy has the ability to change the clothing that you wear, that you can have royal clothing. It says as a Christian that you are a royal priesthood of saints. And so, Chris is going to sing. I don't even want you to sing. I'm going to ask you to stand. But I don't even want you to sing. I want you to come forward. I want you to grab a partner. If you brought somebody, I want you to grab somebody else to come with you and pray with you. I don't know what you got to do. And if you don't have a partner, if you're here alone or whatever, we got people to come forward and pray with you. And if you're not going to come forward, I just want you to stand there and listen to the words and listen to God and be open to what God would say to you. Because there's way more at stake in this moment than you realize. It's a way bigger deal. And for some, this is your Samuel and Saul moment. This is your last chance. This is your last warning. This is the last thing before it blows up. Would y'all stand with me? I'm going to pray. And when Chris starts singing, I want to invite you to come forward and really, truly repent. God, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for your grace, your mercy. I thank you for second chances and 13th chances and 27th chances, and just thank you that no one in here is too far from God. I pray that you would give them boldness. I pray that you would give them strength. I pray that you would give them courage and that you would help them walk out of here redeemed, restored, reinvigorated with your grace and your mercy, with a new focus, a new passion, a new hope in you, a new light on life. God, I pray that you open the floodgates of your Spirit and pour upon us that we would be made new. Pray for those that need to make a decision for the first time, that they would feel just the power pulling them forward, and they would recognize that's you, God. They would submit to it. They would receive you for the first time. Love you. We thank you that you are just waiting here with open arms. Amen. I don't know where you're at, but I know as you got a next step. What I know is whatever you're walking through, whatever questions you have, there's a God who loves you, who cares for you, who wants to connect with you in a very real, fresh way. It just takes you being willing to admit He's God and you're not. If you made a decision today, if you need to take a next step, whatever that is, would you let us know? We want to pray for you. You're going to get, if you do that, text no to 31996, and you're going to get a link. You click on that and just let us know what your decision is, whether you rededicated your life, whether you got something you specifically want us to pray for, or maybe you gave your life to Christ. I don't know what that is, but let us know, because we believe in the power of community. We believe in the power of prayer. We believe in the power of when a body of people come together in a movement to change this city. And so this week, go. Go in knowing that no matter how far away you are, no matter how dark your jacket is, no matter what you're walking through, God desperately loves you, and that you are good in His eyes. God bless. Have a great week. We'll see you next weekend.
I am redeemed. You set me free. So I'll shake off these heavy chains and wipe away every stain. I'm not who I used to be. I am redeemed. Thank God, redeemed.